Okay. Uh, I didn't prepare myself by getting water. Man, I'm super late. We have a lot of comments, I guess. I've been fumbling this. Holy cow. Racco, you're here. Tayo, Lance, Chezi. Yeah, this is a big part of the inspiration. Lance, you get it. Mark, good to see you, my brother. All right. Well, I'm just gonna start riffing, and then I'll go back through the comments. It's it's basically just people commenting on me being late, and part of the reason that I am late this morning is I'm trying to get everything organized for a trip. So I'm trying to do too many things, trying to shove things in. I'm trying to do funny. McMo, you're so funny. You're so funny and handsome. What was the over and under, Anthony, on me not showing up? Yeah, so I'm trying to do too many things. I don't tend to be that structured and organized. And so when I'm trying to organize things, it takes a little extra attention, and I'm probably not dedicating it to that right now. And so, correct, Stephen, that did happen before the stream. And it will probably happen when I jump off here at some point. Trying to fit it all in. My kids like to have snacks when they go on trips. They want to have fun snacks. So I got them some fun snacks. Chad was suggesting, you ever just go crazy and like get them gummy bears and stuff? I did today. Okay. I don't normally like to, because the American diet sucks so much. And the kids have such access to such crap food that I almost feel like if I don't play bad cop, then it'll just be all they'll eat is crap food. And so I wish I had the freedom. I wish I felt the freedom to treat them more to things, but I'm just like, if all you eat is treats, is it a treat? I don't know. Okay, the main things I want to talk about. So Phlebas, is Phlebas here? You hear Phlebas? He gave a comment on Paul's homeroom video this morning where yeah, probiotics are your friends, but probiotics aren't just like magic things that heal your gut flora and fauna and your microbiome when you're just shoving it full of processed sugar and shit constantly. Shout out to Jason Almondtree, because he eats garbage constantly, but I don't know, apparently he hasn't died yet. So yeah, so Jordan Daniel Wood used this word in Wayne's interview of him that he released, I don't know, this morning, last night, something like that, where Wayne's question is mainly in the New Testament when we talk about this whole mystery of Christ and what is the mystery of Christ. And they're reading from Colossians, and Jordan Daniel Wood knows his Bible too. He just quotes out Bible verses like a wild man, and understands the context really well. And and my cliff notes, my takeaway is that the mystery of Christ by the New Testament is Christ in me. And I think what Jordan Daniel Wood would say, based on all his Maximus stuff, and is that Christ is the universal particular. And so in a way, it was helpful to me this way, in that I often think of things in terms of the lack because of Peter Rollins. So Peter Rollins, again, for those that don't know, talks about psychoanalytically, he says the Satan is the thing that promises to fill your lack, your God-shaped hole. And the lack is the thing that promises to make you whole and complete. So whatever you think will make you whole and complete and whatever you think is going to make you okay, that is the lack. And he would say psychoanalytically, the Satan is what promises to make you whole and complete. Which makes me think of the book of James, right? If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives knowingly to all without finding fault, that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. But what is that? What is that wisdom? That wisdom, I think, paradoxically, could be the contentedness with. Peter Rollins would say that is the contentedness with the lack. Is that because he says psychoanalytically, grace is the freedom from the libidinal, this drive, pursuit of the lack, that which will make you whole and complete. And he says most modern day religions, are actually satanic psychoanalytically because they promise to give you your lack. Now, I think what's so great about what Jordan said this morning is he said we often, how did he word it? Is that it's not so much that there's a lack, but a superabundance, an infinite plenitude of overflowing within that's kind of what God is. And then the fullness of that is present in the man, the Son of Man, Jesus Christ. And so that, because he's fully God of fully God. And so the true human being, John Bear would say this, or quoting the centurion looking at the cross, behold the human being, is that Christ is creating from the tree of life, the cross, and you're seeing the fullness of the creation of a human being, which has a infinite abundance, which isn't kind of this lack, which is what makes it an icon. Because Jordan says, just because you can't know something quantitatively fully and know it in its entirety, you can know it truly. And he's like, that's how we know everything. I know my wife that way. I was just talking about my wife on this last stream. We've been together over 20 years. We're coming up on 20 years. This year will be 19. And she's just as much a mystery to me as she was before. Now, does that mean I don't know her? No, of course I know her, but she has a superabundancy which overflows unto infinity. You will never exhaust in any human being the infinite mystery and generativity that's there. And is that a lack? No, it's a superabundance. I like that idea. And then the mystery of Christ is Christ in me and Christ in her. That's that superabundancy, which is present, but also a portal. It's an icon. So it's there. But if you save the appearances, it's not an end in itself. It is an end and the process. So it's like the end and the journey are one in the person, this superabundancy. So that was an idea I had. And then, the wedding garments idea so that's from Matthew 22. And this is an idea that's been coming up a lot because I think my boy Tim the Marylander was saying, that verse just scares. Maybe does it scare the hell out of him? I don't know. It's an interesting phrase, right? Scaring the hell out of me. And so, all the people are invited, and then the ones that are invited don't show up. So they go out to the highways and the byways, and they, bring in anyone who's willing to come, that my house may be full. Let the dead bury their own dead. If people have other priorities, fine, then they can stay out doing their other priorities. And then the people come into the wedding feast, and they're clothed in the garments, and then someone is found in the wedding feast who does not have on the proper garments. And I believe, Neil, you're here, right? And if I misquote you, I think we talked about this in another conversation, but the wedding garments are your contribution to the party. This is what I would say. This is how I would interpret that verse, or what it's seeming like to me, is that your wedding garments are your particular, completely idiosyncratic piece of the multiplicity of the mystery of Christ, which is Christ in you. And if you're not properly wearing the attire, which is Christ in you, at the party, then you're not properly dressed. You're still kayfabing. I would say you're not theosified. You're not fully integrated. And this is what I was trying to claim to Phlebas, or talk about with Phlebas. And I think that it, yeah, and necessarily, Stephen, yeah, they show your participation, of course. So they are your life in preparation for the kingdom of God, which is your life. Your life lived is the fullness of what you believe, right? It's your witness. It's your testimony. It is the pure act of you, Christ in me, your white stone name. I think that's your wedding garment. I don't know. I would say your wedding garment is your white stone name. And so if you have not come into a full integration of who you are in Christ, it doesn't even make sense for you to be at the party. You're not fitted for the party. And so you must be cast out into the outer darkness, I would say, for further refinement, until the chaff is burnt off, until all that remains is your true innermost being, your sacred magic, or to riff on the book of James, until you have received with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. So Lance, you say no, Luke. No, Luke, you have intuited the Orthodox position on the wedding garments. What you talking about, G? Are you saying no? It is your life lived? Are you disagreeing with me or agreeing with me? It seems like you're disagreeing with me, but I'm assuming you agreed with me. So, and I think the last thing I'll say, and then I'll open this up, is that I think a lot of times, particularly in the kind of way that I understood atonement and salvation growing up, which was a very divided world. It was a very two-story universe. It was a very God is out there. I mean, nobody would have said the Sky Daddy up there, far out. People say this kind of stuff all the time, that he is utterly beyond us, ineffable, untouchable. And I would say that's true, but it's also not true. He's also everywhere present, filling all things, and he's everywhere for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. And I would say that it's the implanted word, the implanted logos, the divine spark in you. So it's not outside. It's not just out. It's inside too. It's both end. And then through that process of refinement, when the old man, until that which is perishable has been put off completely, we are in this process of refinement. And then once you're there, you are fully united with Christ and God. And I mean, of which baptism is your entrance. That, baptism is that thing. You've been buried with Christ, and then you'll be raised with him in the same kind of likeness, all that stuff. But in that two-story universe, I think, I don't know, Phlebas, if you're here, you could speak for yourself, but I know myself 10, 15 years ago, and I know a lot of other people would really balk at that, because they have this very either or thing. It's just like, God is other. God isn't here. Christ is other. He's not here. But I would say he is both, the identity of identity and non-identity. And I think that is the mystery of Christ that the New Testament is talking about, is it's not this either or thing. It is the both. Lance, you can just come in anytime. I need to figure out how to, I don't know that I have access. I could probably figure out how to sign in somehow. I have the password to Grail Country stuff, but I don't know how to get on there and pin it. Because I don't know, it's hard doing on these different. Is that your chair?
Oh, it might have been.
Anyhow,
I have an old chair, and I'm the CFO, so I need to be stingy. So I'm just sitting in my old creaky chair.
Dude, I love it. That's how I would always be. I hate buying. My son and I were just talking about this. I would never buy anything new. Like until I'm so I don't know, cheap or frugal in that way that there's certain things that I just don't care about, and I would not buy new, and I will tolerate I would tolerate a squeaky chair till the end of time before I would buy a new one.
Right. No, I texted wrong. What you intuited about the life lived, right, is
Yeah.
is spot on, because the priests, before they start, like before they do the divine liturgy, before they go in, they say this prayer, but it's the same prayer we say right before the Eucharist, which is this little portion, which is, "How shall I, the unworthy, dare to enter the brilliance of thy holy place? If I venture to enter into the bridal chamber, my garment will denounce me, for it is not a wedding garment, and I shall be cast out by the angels. Cleanse, O Lord, the defilement of my soul, and save me, for thou art the lover of mankind." Right? So that's that piece. And then
I'm spot on.
I thought that was so wild. So we say that all the time, right? So of course I'm studying the divine liturgy or whatever. And at any rate, so there's this little piece I grabbed from this archmonk, or there's so many different ways to describe things. I don't know. He's an archmonk or some kind of monk. But anyway, just a cursory look at the New Testament epistles reveal that to put on or to clothe yourself are frequent admonitions. We are to clothe ourselves in Christ, or as it says in another place, in the new man. We are to put off the old man. We are to put on the armor of God, which is righteousness, faith, gospel of peace, salvation, and the word of God. We are to put off anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, and filthy language. We are to put on love, tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, and long sufferings. These are all the things we are to put on. The clothes that we have to take off and put on have to do with our attitudes and behaviors. So this is the crux, right? So the clothing that our heavenly bridegroom has provided us is virtue. Virtue is not an ideal nor a legal position before God. Virtue, if it exists at all, exists as the quality, the godliness, the Christ-likeness of a life lived. You might even say that the wedding clothes of the age to come, the clothes that we will be found wearing in the bridal chamber of the heavenly kingdom, are precisely our life, what we actually lived or strove to live in Christ during our time in this life. At the moment of my death, all that I have imagined myself to be or believe will pass away. All that will be left, the only clothing I will have after my death, is the life I actually lived, the clothing provided by Christ that I actually put on or strove to put on.
Yeah.
You intuited it. You nailed it. That's what I
was. Well, and it can only, and that's the thing, is like it can only be put on by you. Who else is going to put on your garments? And
I've got my garments on, everybody. I just came to say one thing. I'm Tom Lukeson, and today I'm going to demonstrate how to lobster monkey arm wrestle. So first, there's something called the hand control. You got to get them by the lower claw, but if you get them by the upper claw, you're going to get some pincer action. And then what you got to do is you got to go into a king's move. Now, he thinks he's the king, but really there's only one king of used car auto sales. Okay. And it's the Whitestone name brand. We got 10% off until April 8th. When the eclipse is done, then it's done. Okay. So I don't grab the bottom pincer. Well, I grab the bottom pincer to get that hand control, right? It's all in the supination. That's in the wrist. And then when he pinces you, then you gotta let go. Because if you don't let go, then you're not wearing the clothes. So that's all, yo. Sayonara.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for
DLC.
that. I feel like we were all enlightened.
That's what Sherry keeps talking about. Like, so when she got emotional, I think, I can't remember, what, Saturday or something, whatever, she's like, guys, what we have is the life we are living. Live into your life, right? That's it.
Yeah. And who else is going to live your life? You know, you. Abby, what up?
I'm just on here because I've been sad about living my life. I don't have right now. A lot of my life is in potential, and like my physical circumstances don't allow me to really like fully be myself, like, and love the way that I am capable of or want to. So a lot of it is in imagination, and a lot of it is in, like, I don't know, reading stories and stuff, but I think that still counts. But there is a poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins that I should have memorized that is basically this. So let me see. Hopefully I still remember all of it. As kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame, as tumbling over rim of roundy wells stones ring, as each tucked string tells, each hung bell's bow swung finds tongue to ring out broad its name, each mortal thing does one thing and the same, selves, goes itself, myself it sings and spells, crying, what I do is me, for this I came. I say more. The just man, justices, keeps grace, that keeps all his goings graces, acts in God's sight, what in God's sight he is, Christ. For Christ plays in 1,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his, to the Father through the features of men's faces.
You seem to do well. I think you did a good job.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's very lovely. Yeah, I think it's just so I think a lot of my struggle in previous iterations and theologies. See, again, this is where like the propositions matter, because I think when I had these other propositions that I don't think were correct, and I was trying and I was thinking that, you know, these were the correct ones that I was trying to believe, it left me impotent, because there was no, you know, I'm completely bad. There's nothing I can do that's good. It's only Jesus, and Jesus as separate, as divorced from me, this other thing. So all my righteousness is good. His righteousness is all my righteousness is bad, filthy rags, like we talked about the other one. His is the good stuff. But there's no, I feel like that there's no way to talk about how those two things relate, because everything you do is bad and basically just needs to, I mean, that was the understanding that in my early adult life that I had, is like everything that I was is eliminated. Everything. There was no implanted word. There was no divine spark. There was no Christ in me that was growing to maturity like a mustard seed until it gives shade to everything, till it, just becomes the entirety of who you are as the chaff passes away. There wasn't any of that. It was just all is bad. And then there's this other thing that is good. It just, and I felt like there's nothing you can do, or it's completely pointless if you do anything, because they're bad works anyhow. So like, what's the point of even living? Like, you might as well just and I mean, people have this kind of thing when it comes to like their own children or whatever too, like some, sad, confused mother who like kills all her children before they're going to grow up, because that's the way to save them, some weird way. But you might as well kill yourself too, because what's the point of living anyhow? And I know of people who still have this kind of theology, who they basically live their life that way. There's no point to their living. They think all this is going to burn, and they basically just want to die, but they can't kill themselves because it's wrong to kill themselves.
Yeah, that was literally me for like my teenage years.
And so then what do? You just sit there and thank God that there is the implanted word in you that doesn't allow you to live that way fully, because that is nihilism. Because you still love people irregardless. Praise God. Even in that, like, nobody's fully living into that, or else they would, I don't know what would happen. They would, it's not livable. That kind of life isn't livable. That kind of propositional theology, well, I'm sorry to hear that you're struggling where you're at right now, and I've had a rough patch recently, a little bit. I'm feeling better today, but I don't know, the way that I often think about it, I was talking to a friend, is, I used to try to live a little bit in the, facts don't care about your feelings thing, and you just need to get over your feelings, and it's your own subjective stuff, and just disregard it, doesn't matter, just believe the true things. But like, that's not helpful either. The way I try to think about it now is more like it's uh there's the ocean, of which your current feelings and emotions are like maybe a storm within that, and that's real, but it's not the entirety of the ocean. It's part of it, and you want to not be completely, I don't know, because that's where I can go as a highly emotional person, is I just like absolutize that emotion, and then it's just like, and then I start to despair and spiral, because I'm just like, this is everything, I'll never feel better.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's just hard, because I think to deny what you're going through isn't any help either. So
I think some of that is like one of the struggle is and I think what the Jordan Daniel Wood and Wayne Fair conversation today was really good about is I kept trying to think that I would just say for myself that I was trying to find some kind of truth and have some kind of answer or whatever, versus the understanding that it's always a further up, further in. Like Nicholas Acusa talks about, so this living into this mystery, it's like there's a constant unfolding, but as soon as something is unfolded, something else is then enfolded. So you're just constantly moving into this sense of you're never going to arrive. Like you're never going to have the answer. You're never going to find the right confession. Like you're never going to find the commentary that's going to answer all the questions for you. And yet, that's what I was trying to seek, because that was the milieu that I swam in. Like I was trying to, desiring God, I've got all this stuff, and it seems like Piper's got some stuff out. But then he says there's some of this wacky stuff about free will that I can't seem to make sense of. It doesn't seem, so I'm bouncing around instead of just embracing the mystery, right? The understanding that this thing is just, you're just never going to arrive at that sort of thing. And I think that trying to find some place in that. So if I look at someone like, Abby's young or whatever, but here's the thing, Abby, like what you realize is like the older I get, the less I know. Like that's the wild thing. Like, should I take this path or that path? Like there's so much stuff that
well, my problem isn't knowing as much as just I'm really like isolated in a lot of ways. I mean, I was living completely for knowing through most of my life previous to kind of having an epiphany about that. So I guess there still is the habit of like trying to figure things out, but honestly that's only because I don't have like, I guess, a family and a community that I can like connect to and really pour myself into with loving. So that leaves me with just knowledge, which is kind of second best. But people are like, don't overthink, don't do that. I'm like, I'm sorry, should I just manifest, something else to put my attention on out of the ether? Like I don't have limited options.
I think a lot of us in this little corner have been told that they're probably the big portions of their lives, because God bless my dad, he always used to say, you overthink things. Well, that's just, I can't not. Like, that's just what I, try to do. But he's right. Like
overthinking, Lance.
Yeah. And so, but he was right. But see, he was right. But also, he was wrong, because there is this sense of just, worked out for him where he arrived at these places where he'd accept these things and he would just quit questioning anymore and then focus on living his life. And that's okay too. Like, as long as you have the right aim in that to some extent, that works out great, right? Because then you're just living your life. So, but at the same time, if you're someone who's wired to, and you do have these questions, when this is probably your frustration would be, which is like, hey, Luke, you've got to quit asking these questions or you're going to have to get the hell out of our church, right? Like, some people have to go through that, right?
Yeah, it's so terrible. I was at church last night and I was hearing, like, overheard a conversation of one of the old ladies in the church talking to friend of mine, and she was talking about she was talking about how, like, her father she was like, she said she was the least favorite child or the less favored child of her dad because she would always ask questions and he got really angry at her for asking questions. And she was like, I don't know why he was so angry at me. I like just wanted to know why. And like them being them, that's very much the culture of the church. So they were both kind of laughing over it and like making excuses for him. But I'm sitting there like, yep, that's how it starts. Like, just take a child that literally just like wants to know why and is asking theological questions and like blow up and get mad at that child. It was like a perfect example of that whole culture. It was hilarious.
And it is, and so one of the things that I came to is like, but that's in having the grace to see, for example, like your dad or my dad or whatever, like Luke's parents, like raising him, at some point they had probably sat there when he was in the room and was like, is this kid an alien or what? Like, because they're wired differently. They just are different, and trying to understand that. And so it is a struggle because they're being who they are, in how Christ made the Christ in them, right, Luke, right? So that it is. And so it's trying to, find that grace to understand. I would even say my wife has asked me to quit talking about some of these mysterious things because that stuff scares her. She wants a little more certainty, and that's not.
Hey, Lance, can you stop talking, please?
Yeah. And so, like, particularly stuff in this little corner, like, she's watched some of these videos sometimes, and she's like, this is breaking my brain. I don't like this. Like, she doesn't want any part of this. And that doesn't make her less in any way. Like, it's in fact. And so, some of that is she's just different, and her journey's different, and how she lives and moves and moves through the world is different. And that's okay. You know what I mean?
Tim, you got a word? I have some words, but I want to know if you have a word.
I'll drop back down into Hive Mind. Hey, Tim, just a second. I'm going to drop back down into Hive Mind. I have something. God bless you. I'll see you Saturday, Tim, and hopefully other folks come in. So
good to see you, Lance.
Good to see you, Abby.
Abby, I don't think we've ever been on together. I just want to say hi.
Hello.
Yeah, if I could get my grace, benevolence, and love back for the day, that'd be great. I need it back.
I'll send you an energy ball.
So, like, this is semi-related, but like when we were talking yesterday privately, I told you that I experienced something that I couldn't explain, and you seem sure that was a message from God. And since we had this conversation, I can't stop thinking about it, and I would like to stop thinking about it, because I had another sort of experience that was like, you should pray again. And I immediately felt fear at that prospect, sort of because, like, God might become real just to spite me, if that makes sense. Like, and I grew up in a sort of Catholic mysticism tradition, and I have experienced things that I can't explain that have been like confirmed, like that, like I would not want to tell anyone that I saw this or heard this, because even like as a child, I remember these experiences of like seeing Jesus, especially at prayer meetings, and like, you try to tell people this as a kid, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I saw him too," whatever. But it's like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, I saw somebody bathed in light, like in this room, and I eventually grew out of believing these were spiritual experiences and just like interpreted them as hallucinations or wistful thinking or just misfiring or something like that. And so I guess what I'm wondering is like, how do you know, like, given that you believe in God, how do you interpret whether God is speaking to you or your stomach is speaking to you? Or if like is it a feeling that you have? Do you just kind of trust your gut, so to speak?
Are you asking me in particular or everyone? The room?
I'm asking the room.
Okay. For me, I don't know. This probably won't be any help to you, but I don't know how to say it other than this. This is kind of like when I say I don't know what it would even mean to not believe in God. I think God is speaking in everything all the time. I mean, in my stomach growling, that's God speaking. Everything is speaking. You know, it's the good, the bad, all of it. All of it. It's I wouldn't even know how to, because that's the thing, is like a few things came to mind when you were talking. I don't know that I've had any sort of I don't think I've had any sort of like mystical experiences like you're talking about. I've never done psychedelics. I've never done anything. It's just kind of like and in the end we'll go ahead, Abby. You have something to say? Go ahead.
Oh, I don't think so. Only I guess I technically have had experiences like that, but I wasn't really gonna say something.
Okay. And part of it makes me think is like, what's so funny is because like you don't, I mean, I think you've said on here, you don't really self-identify as a Christian and you have struggle with belief or faith or call it whatever you will. And you've had some of these experiences. Or I saw this little clip last night of Peter Boghossian, like, I don't know, some self-identifying religious person who is probably tribal and has their own fears and insecurities felt the need to like shout out at him as he was doing a Q&A talking to someone and challenge him and, you know, like whatever, stand up for God or something, which, I mean, to me, that stuff just always reeks of insecurity. You know, it's just like, it's the equivalent of just like some kind of beta male walking around with air lats or something, but like in the religious realm. And Peter Boghossian said something like, I mean, it was kind of shocking of him to hear him say it, but it was great. I think he really believes this, that he said, you know, I wouldn't even believe in God, you know, like if it was written, you know, because sometimes atheists will say that, like if God wrote in the sky, like I exist. Peter Boghossian was like, I wouldn't believe that because you have so many other, you'd have to exhaust all the other possibilities of what that would be. And I wouldn't believe it. And the thing that I like so much about Father John Bear, and I think it's actually related to this whole idea, the Christ in me thing, is that, okay, there's a couple things. Just give me a sec. There's Father Bear says one of the most shocking things, this is like one of his big messages that he preaches all the time. One of the most shocking things of the Gospels is just how slow to believe and full of doubt the disciples were all the time from a Christian perspective as those who were around the historical, physical Jesus Christ. And none of them believed it. And Peter denies him 3 times. Judas betrays him. And we're all saying, like, this is the Son of God. This is God incarnate. And the people who were actually historically around him didn't believe him. Because a lot of people say, like, well, I'd like to go back to that time and see it for myself. But Father Bear says the whole amazing thing about the Gospels is, like, it wouldn't do you any damn good. Because the ones who were there didn't even believe it. And so what's amazing about it, and even like Peugeot talks about this with the weirdness of the resurrection, is like the Gospels don't leave it to you to have it be this just like simplistic, like it was, do you believe in the physical resurrection? The people who were there didn't even recognize him. You know, they go to the tomb, they think he's a gardener, and they go to embalm the tomb, or like, you know, they go to the upper room and none of them recognize him. He shows up in the upper room, the resurrected Christ. None of them know who he is. And then Father Bear says that what happens is he opens the scriptures, tracing to him all the things about himself. So all the, the Hebrew scriptures, and then he breaks the bread, and their eyes are open and they recognize him for who he is. And then he disappears. So like what Father Bear's point with belief in Jesus is that the exact same way that the disciples recognized him for who he was 2,000 years ago is the exact same way we recognize him for who he is today. It's the exact same phenomenon in the opening of the scriptures and the breaking of the bread, which to him is the sacramental reality of like what the church is doing. And it's a mystery. And this is the last thing I'll add, and then I'll shut up, is that I believe, like I listened to some great YouTubes on Christian universalism. And if it is true that God knows you even better than he knows yourself, he knows you more intimately than you know yourself. And if he loves you and you don't believe in like a God of partiality that arbitrarily chooses this one and not this one, and you think he's the kind that leaves the 99 for the one, he knows you better than you know yourself. He knows what you need. And I think faith is the believing that in spite of how you feel in the storms of your life and what you're feeling right now and your doubts and your insecurities, all of it is a gift if received as a gift. I mean, that's my kind of radical Christian universal reconciliation belief is I think that everything that happens and everything that's happening to you it's a tautology. I fully admit it is for your good, and it's part of what you need to become Christ in Tim. You're filling up what's lacking in Christ's afflictions. That's what I think's happening. And listen, for the saints, for a lot of people, like it's saints' lives weren't happy. Like they weren't fun. They weren't easy. And those are the people we're supposed to aspire to be. I often feel like I'm doing it wrong because I don't know. If I was more holy, I think I'd be suffering more than I am, or something. I don't know. I get it, Abby. I mean, I think
Suffering is not holy.
Huh?
Suffering is not. Well, I'm not going to say categorically suffering is not holy. It's a bug, not a it's what am I trying to say?
A feature.
At least from my experience of uninhibited suffering for many years, it's not the suffering that helped me. It just had to be through suffering because that's the accident. That's the world that I lived in, that we live in. But like, it's the joy and the love that actually has ever made a good, done anything. Yeah. Not the suffering, because all that gave me was trauma.
Well, I mean, it's almost what I mean is a lot of the suffering is in opposition to it. I think the kind of suffering you're talking about is to not receive everything as a gift. Like, I don't want this. And to fight against it. Whereas I think the true position, and I don't live into this, is to receive everything as a gift and just be like, what is God teaching me in this? Because then that's to turn your suffering into joy, for the joy that was set before him, enduring the cross, despising the shame. Hebrews 12.
It's the purposeful suffering versus the pointless suffering.
Yeah. And you're going to be in the dark for a lot of that. I mean, Christ himself was. I mean, that's Gethsemane.
So,
or my God, why have you forsaken me? You think we're not going to go through that kind of darkness? You have to.
Wasn't that the main point where Christ doesn't see, like he loses? I don't know. I've heard some people, like theologians, say, "Oh, that's the time he that disconnect from the Father at that time. He has to almost take that on." But in that he is thrust into logical time playing out, where that suffering we just live we live it step by step by step. But in faith and love and hope, we like make sense of all of it backwards. It gives meaning and structure to all of it backwards, and then we replay it out, and now it gives light to go forwards again, past the logical time. It makes sense of us to keep going forwards, and that's almost where you're like, okay, now I feel you, God, but it's not until you had to go backwards and then logically play it out again. Then it thrusts you like forwards in a way. Like that is almost the Holy Spirit. Now I can go on and love fuller and more. But when you're in that suffering, you're just this logical time playing it out step by step, and this is killing me, God. But
Right.
Christ puts that on the cross. But now all the disciples get all of it back after the cross, and they see Christ, not Jesus Christ. They see the Christ, and all of that is put into. Now they can go out into the world almost in a way. But
Right. And it's the very Jordan Peterson, like when Jordan talks about through his, this is when he's speaking within his own expertise. So everyone out there that thinks he should stay in his lane, this is when he was. When he was saying that most of the people he's counseled and things, and they know this from the research, that the thing that most people find valuable in their life is exactly what you're talking about, Andrew. It's these terrible moments of suffering, these difficulties that they endured in their life, that asked if in the moment they would have said, take this away from me, they would have said, absolutely. But then in retrospect, they say that thing is the thing that's the most valuable thing in their life that made them into who they are.
and
Sometimes.
now it's the peace they want. That's true. But
Because
now once, go ahead, sorry.
I wanted to talk to Tim quick. So like there's this, how's it going, Tim? Good to see you. I had this realization a couple weeks ago. I was thinking about this strange miracle of revelation that happened. And for like, I don't know, last year and a half or 2 years or so, I was walking around thinking like I had this intrinsic knowing that this could never leave me. And then I was suddenly terrified at the prospect that as quick as he gave me faith, it could be completely just taken from me for whatever reason he would see fit. And and that was like terrifying. So the decision was made. I started thinking about that, like, wow, as in the same way that he gave it to me, it could just be stripped from me. And if that ever happens, will I will I have the courage to wait even if it never comes again? And like I hope that the answer to that question is yes. I hope that that never happens because I never want to go back to the place of unbelief um again. But you know, like I had this experience this morning. There's a guy that I was working with. I'm sponsoring him. We started working together like 3 months, 4 months ago, and he was on fire. And like he was like in tears with me, working with me closely, and we're reading the book and we're taking the steps, and he's seeking God, and I'm just like amazed by this, right? I'm like, and it's one of those experiences when you work with somebody that you're just like, oh my God, this is the most one of the most beautiful moments. This is what I live for, right? And I get a text this morning from him out of nowhere. He says, like, I don't want to waste your time. I've thought a lot about this, but I can't continue on this path anymore. And I was like, whoa, like, where did that come from? So he went from complete and total surrender and belief, right? He took the hardest moment of his life and used that inertia to seek God, and like he wasn't lying. And for some reason, he wakes up and he tells me, "No, I just can't do it no more." Now, I don't know why that is. I have my suspicions on why that might be, but at the end of the day, it's none of my business. So, just from friend to friend, Tim, I would say if you had an experience, it's like that bearded Mark guy, what he said, like these things aren't scalable and these aren't quantifiable. Just if you can, take it for what it is, and and then like, but the other thing is about those experiences, they were never meant to carry us all the way. They just never were.
You should notice them, appreciate them, and keep moving towards whatever seemed to have the willingness that brought that moment to you in the first place, and just keep moving forward. Like C.S. Lewis talked about the rule of undulation, and this is what he's talking about. You're gonna have these moments where it's like, I feel like I'm in the desert, and I'm seriously going to die or kill myself, and just have to recognize the best we get to be is human, and sometimes we get a taste of heaven. And I know this all sounds corny and all that shit, but it's just so real, man. And if you ever feel like you need to talk, you can call me, and you don't have to be this image of whatever you think we have. You don't have to even come close to that. Just have the one that you have and work with what you have, and try and stay up against the rope sometimes. I don't know if that's helpful, but I had to break Lent to come talk with you. So I'm going back on Lent. I love you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Love you
Chad.
too.
Please
This year,
feel bad
this
for
year I
breaking
gave
it.
up Lent for Lent. So.
Atheism for Lent. Peter Rollins.
Yeah,
He's been
I
doing it
gave
for a
up.
decade.
I gave up atheism for Lent.
I'm
Does
not
that
even
mean
kidding.
I can go back to not believing on Sundays?
Sure.
Yeah. So like, one thing that really bothers me is this experience I've had my whole life with religious people, specifically Christians, where like part of your social currency in a Catholic charismatic community is that you have to constantly be receiving gifts of the Spirit and sort of bragging about them to everybody so that everyone can see how holy you are. I know it's very cynical. It's just the truth. But I found it very odd that, we can read the story of Job, right? Where to me, the main theme is you have no fucking idea, right? You will never know the mind of God. You will never know the heart. Like you are an insignificant, puny speck, and like you can never trust your own intuitions when it comes to the Almighty, right? So that would lead me to believe that like I don't get to decide what is and is not God talking to me. But when I tell people like, oh, I thought I saw an angel, they go, oh, beautiful, that was God, right? Or I say, I feel like God is wants us to learn how to pray again. Oh, wonderful, right? Great, that was definitely God. But when I tell people that in the same, like with the same holy like certainty that I received these other messages, I also was told it's time to put the Bible away. It's time to let it go. Jesus is not God. Like I am God, and I'm so much greater than this puny concept that you call Jesus. And then all of a sudden the Christians go, whoa, 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 that wasn't God. And then I go, excuse me, we just got done reading the Bible that says that you have no fucking clue what is and is not God. And so I find that people really only interpret spiritual experiences through the lens by which they already believe. And anything that may call their beliefs into question, they can simply write off as the devil or as your own human error. And I don't think any of us are going to solve this problem here right now, but it is something that leads me to think that everybody's kind of full of shit on this topic, and that I should like keep my experiences to myself and just keep not believing until, I finally get that text message from God, or he shows up at my front door, or there's some like beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is real. Because I've been asked to believe in a lot of things in my life that eventually led me to pain and ruin. And so part of the way I protect myself now is by not believing in things, right? I don't want to be, I don't want you to ask me to trust you, because like I don't have to trust a doctor, right? They're like, it's clear that their qualification, like I don't have to trust math. I don't have to, like, you know what I mean? Like it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Never mind.
Bring
No,
that tea grog
no,
heat.
we do mind because you're, like I said, Tim is cooking and let Tim cook. So I missed the last 5 minutes before I jumped back on, but why I jumped back on initially was to share why I love Kanye West. So I think I must have been, I don't know, 12, 13, somewhere around that age, early teens, and between my first and second, is that me again? Is it beeping?
I think it was Ron. I muted you, Ron, or it was one of you.
All right, okay, cool. Getting flashbacks to yesterday. But yeah, so I was in my early teens, in between one of my many conversion moments, and I was listening to The College Dropout, and in Jesus Walks, there's a line where Kanye goes, "I want to talk to God, but I'm afraid because we've not spoken in so long," and that just grabbed me, and I could not stop thinking about that line because that summed up exactly my relationship with God in that moment. And so I wanted to share that firstly. And also I really wanted to get Ron on there because Ron and I have been in conversation for a few weeks now, talking about spiritual experiences because we've both got feet in the Pentecostal world. So Ron, I want to hear what you've got to say.
Bring it. Oh, I can unmute you, Ron. Here, go.
Okay. Hi, Emily, and I don't know the guy. Anyhow, it's hard to see, but I just want to say hi first. Talking about the wedding garments, and all right, I'll just be blunt. 23 years ago, I was an addict, and I hated Jesus with all my heart. And I'm not kidding you. I used to say, I wish I could have nailed your boy up to the cross myself with venom. Like I hated him. I'm Jewish, it's like part of the gig. My buddy OD'd, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm next. And I'm like, okay, fine. It's kind of like, if you're real, let's talk. Middle of a dirt field. There was no angels, like they showed up physically. In my heart, interiorly, it was like an atomic bomb of love and power went off. And I didn't even know this was real. I didn't, oh, by the way, I heard the gospel at the pop festivals, so the experience that I encountered has been 23 years ago. It's changed, but it's kept me. I didn't earn it, and I don't keep it. It's just the opposite. The more I'm as screwed up as anybody, if not more so. And he has kept me. That the garments, I think, are everything's defined by his love. I've had an amazing encounter, but to be honest, the reason I'm here at Grail Country and all you guys is I need a better way of interpreting it and processing it and stewarding it. I don't want to go by experiences all the time, but they do happen. I don't know why they don't happen more. I think God loves the ones who actually hate him, but actually don't know him. But if they met him, they'll love him. And he's like, okay, fine, this is your process. You hate me now, but you're going to love me later, and you're going to crack me up as you come along because you're going to love it, and you're going to drag a bunch of your buddies along with it. Does that track with your conversation, Luke? Anybody?
Yeah. It's the interpretation of mystical experiences and discernment. That sounds like what Tim brought up. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, like hate. I've said this a lot before. Hate is love. I mean, you don't hate things that you don't care about. Like the reason you hate is because you care so much, and there's something off and weird about it. And so I often think, or I think of that verse in Revelation all the time. I wish you were hot or cold, or you're lukewarm. I'll spit you out my mouth.
Right.
I mean, some of the deepest believers in God, I think, are atheists.
I think God loves atheists. I'm serious. I think those are his favorites. Because he's
I
like,
think
you
you're right.
know, like,
Oh,
I'm
this
glad you're
is
talking. Go ahead.
this is just reminding me of so I've been watching the one of the spin-off of the Walking Dead series, and the one that's set in France, because I was like, well, finally an apocalypse where they're in a country where they also have like ancient ruins of like previous I'm like, that's where it should be set. So it was really good. It's the one about Daryl. I didn't even watch the original show, so I don't know. But the France one deals more with like faith and, you know, symbolic meaning versus kind of this group that's just going for like military might. And it's so beautiful. I'm like crying watching it. I'm like, come on, I just want to see people like kill zombies and stuff. And you guys have to have like this scene where there's like a monastery and it's like everywhere in France. There's one in Paris, there's one it's all over. It's beautiful. Beautiful show. But there's like a monastery and they're all like, then people attack the monastery and they're all like singing around a fire, and I'm like, oh, but basically the main character is pretty cynical and kind of an atheist, and he interacts with and ends up helping like a bunch of these people that are very much people of faith, and it's so good.
I think that's a lot of what's going on in the modern world. Like, I think we've started to realize this in TLC. PBK has been talking about this recently. Like, was the Protestant Reformation good or bad? We'll see. And I would argue that it's necessary. Is atheism good or bad? Is disbelief in God good or bad? We'll see. I would propose that it's necessary for a lot of people to end up with the kind of faith that they're meant to have. It's that, Nate said it up here, but it's just like whatever it was, is where would you go, Nate? God loves the honest atheist who refuses to believe in a false image of him. Because that's the whole, that's all the stuff we talk about. It's saving the appearances from Barfield. It's if the icon doesn't remain an icon, it becomes an idol. And of course you can turn an icon into an idol. Or it's like that Polanyi quote, which has been a while, but like doubt and belief are ultimately equivalent. Doubt relies on a subterranean set of tacit belief in something else. So doubt is belief. It's just belief in not that. So is that kind of atheism? Is that true atheism? It's just like, I don't believe that thing.
I want Andrew to say something because he stopped driving now. So
yeah.
No, I was just, what's just coming to mind is the idea of like, I think there's a philosopher that says, to negate something to negate it, you have to approve of it in a way. You've had to work past it. And like, you're taking it to another point. It's like a step further. And then that's where I see the estuary, that these, T-Grog bringing up all of these concerns is something to take into consideration. I think the thing is, though, like we're saying with the garments of skin, I think that's the point, though, is when we put on this garment, like that's what I was just thinking about, like you, Lance and Luke were talking about their parents, or Lance was talking about it, but that's the point, is our parents, to a degree, and this is really hard, but for us to see a world, they have to cut like cut a world open and like kind of extremely, in a way, like we're the child that keeps going, well, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? At some point, you hit the bedrock of I know. So stop it. This is the point where I have to like be very blunt with you, and this is a world where you have to live into. You know what I'm saying? And so the child may at that point, okay, maybe these questions, the church does that to some point, but at some point, that garment of skin, you're cut and you're wrapped with that garment of skin. And now some people live in that, but most of the time, our teenage years, we move past it. But the other point is like when we come into a scientific understanding, or the church becomes like we step out of that one garment that was handed to us, and then we step into a new one. It's like, oh man, this garment is so nice. But at some point, like that lack and contradictions start rising up in our perception of that garment of skin. And then it's almost like, well, I'm not giving this one up because I came out of that last one. I negated that last one to move here. And this is so hard. But it just, at some point, our subjectivity is like, no, it's too much. All of these contradictions are overwhelming. I have to move on. We're forced into this liminal space. I think that's kind of what we're hitting on, like, and we throw all those contradictions back on the people that are saying, don't move out from this garment of skin. And we're like, and then we almost like totally just vehemently spew all of that back at them in this deconstruction process. But I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. But like how do you move it? But I think that's where the TLC is. It's like, it's okay to explore. It's all good. You're not going to go anywhere. But the point is, you can't come spewing your garment of skin and trying to wrap others up in it, because that's kind of like, it's just not happening. But go ahead.
You'll never get, if you're trying to live somebody else's Christ in me, you'll never find yours.
But I mean, even science, like if you're trying to live scientifically your understanding to someone else, it's just not going to work. Like, they are living in a world they've been cut into, in a medium that they see from. You can't just rip it down from them, because that would take apart a world that they're not ready to walk out of. But
yeah, agreed.
But it sounds to me like, I do want to do some Christian YouTubing, but let's do some more TLC playing. It sounds to me like, Tim, that you did try to view those experiences via the scientific materialist lens, and it just didn't fit, because that's it often doesn't fit like that. It doesn't allow for, you can't just tell yourself that something you experienced was just an hallucination. When you're having a literary experience, and when you're having a transcendent experience, put it that way. And I think that's I don't envy you. I don't envy you trying to put that together, and I'm coming back from the scientific route that doesn't fit, and having to, okay, do I have to try this Christian thing? It doesn't. I can completely understand the frustration of, we're back here again. But now for some Christian YouTubing, which is just me sharing my experience. Firstly, the reason I really take this TLC thing, the reason TLC is real to me, is because it offered me a chance to do what I think you're trying to do, which is reconnect. I mean, go back to the Kanye line. I want to talk to God, but I'm afraid we've not spoken in so long. There was a way in which I thought you could speak to God. There was a language that I was taught, that this is the language, the Christian is like, this is how you speak to, this is how you interact with the Most High, this is the language. And I tried that language on and used it, and it left it for one reason or the other. And I felt like I couldn't go back to that language. I couldn't go back to speak those words. But TLC often showed me, like, okay, there are so many different languages, so many different ways in which people are trying to navigate their spiritual quest. And what I got from it, like my wrestling, I had a spiritual experience light, where I was just wrestling with God, but like just full of wrestling with God. And what came from that is, it has to be Jesus. Jesus has to be that's the way to get to the Father, to put it that way. If I can just find a way to hang on to the Jesus story, to cling on to the Jesus story, find my place in that story somewhere, things made a lot more sense, and I can just hold on to that. And the experiences sort of, I think, like Ron was saying, good luck. I think we'll probably find out the day after the world ends how much experiences most of us have had and ignored, how much what those experiences even mean.
Oh,
That just the posture of gift. It's a gift. Look, I agree with you. I think you said something earlier, which is something like, I'm definitely not a saint, because I would suffer more, and I am right there with you, brother, because I'm low in negative emotions, which also adds to it. But there's so much gift that I've experienced. I'm like, and I listen to Tim's story. I'm like, yeah, I can really see that suffering. I can really see you wrestling with that. But the Christian YouTube thing is, it has to start with Christ. That's the place to wrestle with. And yeah, it's you have to do that wrestling. None of us can do that for you. But we're happy you're doing it with us publicly, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I may be a lot of things, but I am honest. That's one of my saving It's one of my redeeming qualities, we'll say. Yeah, I'm reminded of this time I was 18, and some Franciscan primitives, which are a type of monk, came to our community, and one of them was a demonology expert, supposedly, and they offered us individual sessions where they would discern whether we were possessed by any evil spirits.
No! Oh my, no! I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh my God! Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you, Tim.
And so I
Oh,
sat
dude.
down, and he outstretched his hand like this, and he goes yuck, yuck,
Oh,
yuck, yuck, like he makes this really weird guttural noise with his
man.
throat, and he's silent for a little bit, and then he opens his eyes and says, God has told me that you are currently possessed by the spirit of pride and the spirit of masturbation, right? And I was like, oh my God, how did he know? You know? But then, like, once I became a functional adult, I looked back on that experience and was like, oh really? The 18-year-old boy suffers from pride. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was, I think I'm pretty kind of confidently correct in saying that, like, that was just bullshit, you know? Yeah, go ahead.
Tim, dude, I'm so sorry for you. Like, I agree with you. I part of the reason I'm here is that, yeah, I'm charismatic, and yeah, I got whacked by God. Like, I am the odd dude out. But I've been part of the reason I'm here is I experienced a lot of stuff like that, and it's jive. It's evil. You know what I mean? I think real discernment is to just let you know when it's real. It is to build, edify, and exhort. God looks for the gold. He doesn't. He looks for the gold in us, the love, the good. Anyhow, I've had that too, and it just, I ain't gonna cuss, but it irritates me to a way that I usually can't express without cussing. So, on behalf of everyone who thinks, because I deal with heroin addicts, and you know what I mean? And sometimes they got some weirdness going on. And sometimes you do need to discern what's going on, but it's never to humiliate, and it's always to free. So anyhow, sorry to interrupt you. I apologize. But
No, you're good. You're not interrupting. You feel free to always. I mean, you kind of got to a little bit. So
Well,
I'm gonna get going, and Lance is gonna take over. But Tim, love you. Think you're fantastic. I actually think your struggles and then your confessing them and talking about them in here is maybe a grace to a whole bunch of people. So chew on that one for a while. Your suffering's helping people. So not that we should ask for more. Maybe. Here's the thing. I wish I were accursed for the sake of my brethren. You know, you're maybe St. Pauling it. I don't know. You're maybe being a bodhisattva, suffering for the sake of other lowly people.
I can take it.
Tom, I think this is very true, actually, and I'll just leave it at that. Whether God lives depends on us then. Sorry. I
gotta go too.
My voice is cracking. Emily was told she had the spirit of Jezebel. It's always great when people do this,
dude.
right? Mo said this. Tim need to stick his hand out to that dude and say, I sense the spirit of bullshit and deception on you.
Well, like, you guys have to understand, these guys were superstars in the Catholic Church, right? They came with the highest level of spiritual authority that one can have short of a cardinal or a bishop, right? And so for me to even entertain a thought, right, because the Bible says that we can commit sins in the silence of our own minds, right? Like, if I were even entertain a thought that this was bullshit, I would be going against thousands of years of Catholic tradition.
The prophets, man. That's always the lives of the prophets, the lives of the holy fools. They're never popular. Nobody likes them. Luke 6:26. Woe to you when everyone thinks well of you. You know, I mean, that's not like it is true, and the conservatives always tell me this, the temperamentally conservatives, is just because there are legitimate prophets and people who speak against the powers and principalities doesn't mean you're one, and that doesn't like just give you the freedom to just like equate yourself with like the spirit of a prophet and think you're right about everything. Whatever, granted, true, but there are legitimate prophets. So,
And sometimes prophets get it wrong. And when they do, the ones I've met, I mean, they're just guys and girls who have something cool going on. When they get it wrong, they own it. And the ones that I really like, to be honest, they're just nice people, you know? So anyhow, that's the sign of a true prophet. They don't call your junk out. That one irritates me pretty bad. So, is it Tim? Yeah, you got hosed, dude. Even there's nobody perfect who does this stuff. It's kind of like it's art and interpretation and the law of averages. At least that's what I've seen. And the good ones will let you record it, and you know what I mean. So you can go over it, and it'll always make you feel better too. By the way, it's it's love when it's done right. So that's my opinion and what I've come to know and understand so far. And if you're an atheist, to be honest, dude, I think God loves you more than most people in church because he's like, all right, you're talking honest to me, so we can work this out.
I appreciate
All
that.
right. Next. Yeah, no, dude, seriously. This is going to sound funny, but if you were a real atheist, you wouldn't be here.
Don't you dare. Don't you take it back.
Please tell me you're not a real
Watch
atheist.
your mouth.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I apologize. That's like, we'll have a beer. I got to go to work. I got to go get warm. I'm freezing my behind off. But it was a pleasure meeting you guys.
See you.
Hopefully we'll talk again. I'll see you. Bye-bye. How do I just...
Yeah, I just jumped in. Luke asked me to jump in. Oh, we'll get Ron.
Bye, guys.
Okay. Yeah, Luke just asked me to jump in. Like, one of the things that actually while we were talking, Tim, about pushing back people saying this thing and that thing, even if they have some authority or whatever. Like, even in my charismatic, spending a lot of time around charismatics, and I was really drawn to that because they live in this space where the veil is thin, right? And that made sense to me, and so on and so forth. But I sensed early on, and I think we see this a lot now. Like, I just know, like, when someone, like, I am very suspect when anyone comes up to me and says, "Hey, God told me to tell you this," or "I have a word for you," or that stuff, because God's a lot more like, there's much more silence. I mean, he's not sitting there talking to you all day, telling you to tell this person that and this, that, or whatever. Like, that's just not been my experience. And the other thing that I found is that a lot of times when people would tell me things like that, like, I think they're sincere, but it's like it wasn't true either. So, like, but I never let those people, like, I guess I had this capability, like, I never let that take me away from my pursuit or my seeking or the reality of it or whatever. But I think and that's why I think that thing that Nate talked about, where he was pointing to, like, I hear a lot of the things that you're kicking against are things that I kick against even, like, right now today, even though I'm on this place where I'm very heavily persuaded that I'm pursuing a path, right? And that path is Christ and everything else. So, like, I just think, like, the things that you're pointing to make a heck of a lot of sense to me. Like, I'm kicking against the same things, I guess what it's helped me a bit is that, like, I try not to hold what all these other people say and do, like, against God per se, or to get away and, get between me and him to a certain, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, I have a I have a mental disability that I believe that my worth or my value does not come from within me. It comes from other people, just because like that's what evidence has shown me, right? Like a student is not allowed to grade themselves. You're not allowed to set your own salary. You don't get to decide whether you're innocent or guilty in court. And so like I don't see any like situations where like a person's appraisal of themselves it like matters. It always matters somebody else's appraisal of you. And like when everybody is telling me, and I understand that like I'm a minority of persons that hold this belief, and it's very self-harming, I understand, but like if a majority of people are telling me that I'm crazy or are telling me that I'm unholy or are telling me that I'm a sinner or whatever, like it does affect me, because like what other people think about me determines how much money I make. It determines how safe I am. It determines like whether or not I get a second date. It determines, like what other people think of me is like so important. And so it's really like painful to not agree or to think that something that millions of people believe in is bullshit.
Well, I think I want to point a couple things. Like, as he says, the prophets do call people out. I agree with that, but there are a lot fewer. Many more people think they're prophets, and they are not. So that's the point I would make there. And I agree with you, Annie Mae, that he does absolutely. I believe that. I also think a lot of people think God is going around to tell people to tell things, and it's like the still quiet spirit. It's something you got to really discern. And we're so quick to run around. At least this has been my experience, right? Now there have been people in my life that have given me some things, and I think Tim, you're a smart guy. Like you just nailed it, right? And so, which is that I have this thing in me that I realize I'm a people pleaser, right? So I want people to like me, and if I would pattern that and I would look how that played out in my life, that would cause me to be dishonest or all sorts of different things, right? Just so I would do that, and that's a really a difficult thing to go through life. And I think what you're talking about is this fear, which is like, what if Tim's just Tim and he just seeks first the kingdom of God and understands he adds everything else and let the cards fall where they may. I'm going to be authentic Tim. I'm going to try and be loving and kind, because I know that's your heart. You want it. I know you. Like you want to be a loving, kind person, and you just do the best you can through that. And then whatever it attracts, whether that be jobs, relationships, whatever it is, friends, you just let the cards fall where they may. You know what I mean? And that's kind of a way to pursue things. Now, again, it's freaking easier said than done, because I just told you I'm a people pleaser, and I fight that all the time, right? Because I want you to like me, Tim. I want people to think I'm smart and good looking and talented and all those good things, and I don't have.
We think you're smart.
So, but anyway, I also think, and David said this. This is so true, man. I have seen this happen, like in real life, multiple times. Like people coming in, in like 12-step groups or whatever, and they will say things like, I think all of you are full of shit. I think you're liars. And I think this God stuff you're trying to talk about is a bunch of bullshit. And that's amazing, because at least you're like being super honest. Like, yep, great, you're in the right place. Like, keep, whatever. And then the other thing I was thinking about is like, and Chad mentioned this somewhere, a lot of this stuff, and you see this in a lot of literature, is willingness. Willingness is the key, the linchpin, the key that opens the door. We just have to be willing. I don't believe this thing. Don't worry. Are you willing? It's like when Jesus asked, do you want to be well? It's like, are you willing? Well, I've been doing these things for 3 months and it's not working. That's okay. Are you still willing to keep? We've done this, are you willing to keep going on? And it's just, you know, that sort of thing. The other thing that I think it's a threat to other people, the whole God of your understanding, just seek on this path, start practicing these spiritual principles. And if you do that thing, I do believe that eventually that the spiritual experience will happen. The problem with that stupid thing is some people it takes longer, which is frustrating. If you're one of those people that it might take 6 years of doing this crap over and over and over again for it to happen, that's frustrating. And then other people have the wild, overwhelming experience like Ron was talking about, right? And other folks, it's so much more subtle that it's really just looking back, actually taking some time and looking back and then realizing, holy crap, wait a minute. I've been completely changed and I missed all these obvious things behind me. And so, but that's easy for me to say because I'm going to be honest, like I had the freaking blow your doors off experience. But that was after 20 years of seeking, by the way. So it wasn't an overnight deal.
I don't know.
Okay?
Yeah, I find it hard to talk to Chad. We just have
So-
beef, I guess.
So at any rate, Tim, you showing up again here or whatever, I'm glad we'll have a conversation Saturday. I think we want to try and do something for Chad's channel. So I'm looking forward to explore that stuff. But one thing I do appreciate you is like, you'll sit there a while, but eventually you can't not say the thing you want to say and you just say it very bluntly. I think that's perfect for a lot of people. Sucks for you.
It gets me in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, Gavin's here. Mitch, welcome, gentlemen. What say you?
I wanted to say I don't know. Like I learned to say that a long time ago, and it's helpful. So the number of things that I claim to know, I try to keep it as small as possible. Right. So like this idea that saying I don't know is good, it would be one of those things. So that's what I wanted to add.
I was thinking that it's interesting to try to litigate, signs and wonders and certain words and mystical experiences at this scale. I don't know if we could do it at all. The litigation probably has to come in this small, local, communal place. It's like I may have to sometimes because I'm alone or something to try to discern whether or not something is legitimate or errant. But in general, you don't want to have a private interpretation of much of anything. And so there's that end where you can't really do it by yourself. And then there's this other end where it's kind of impossible to do it at this scale, at this internet style scale, bringing in different. I mean, there's one thing is we take each other at our word, and that's probably the best practice unless someone's given us reason to doubt them. But man, it's just, it feels like this is the first or second worst place to try to determine the legitimacy of mystical experiences.
Anyone got an opinion on self-love? Because that's what the one of those discussions.
I can't read the comments, so why don't you tell us?
Oh, you should be able to. It's like there's private chat and comments on the right. But basically, like sola scriptura. Alas, I'm not sola scriptura anymore. No, well, I don't know. Basically, the argument is, I'm like, yes, we should be. Yeah. I'm like, yes, I'm self-centered, and I think people should be, and like, there's not a problem with that. But then many people think that it's the greatest evil, and it's about being that it's about being Okay, get on and talk if you want to then. Sorry, saying that like there's this thing about being selfless. I think that like there are two different I think part of it is just like different definitions and using different terms because there's one kind of in different terms maybe work better for different people depending on their upbringing. Like Jason always says that self-love is the highest value is a poison. I think that equally because it comes down to propositions and like the spirit of the thing, I think. And I think some people call the same spirit a love of self that spills over into a love of others, and they call the same spirit a self-forgetfulness that spills out into an all-embracing love. Like, I really think you can call that like, there's one spirit of harmony between the self and others, and some people call it come at it from one angle. It's kind of like an emergence versus emanation thing, maybe. You know, some people come at it from one angle of, I'm gonna completely forget the self expands, and as it does, you sacrifice for a larger self. Christ is the ideal, sacrificing all for all. See, that's my view, and that's how I come at it. And just the only way that it can make sense to me is to see, you know, as a person who's selfish, that means they have a small self, and you want it to become bigger and bigger, but it's still the same schema of I am myself, and I want to help and protect that which is within the circle of myself, and hopefully that circle expands. Then there's the other schema of like starting, I guess, and this just has never worked for me, but I guess for some people, like, this is how they start. So, like, starting by forgetting about that small circle of themselves and, like, looking outward, and then you get to a point where you say, well, self-loathing is bad too. Self-loathing is selfish too. Yeah, no, yeah, that's the problem. You can't define it. Yeah. The same schema but in opposite direction. See, yeah, that's the most like I have a lot of like irritation, but that's just like my feelings of irritation. But like honestly, when I look at it objectively, I think it's like an emergence emanation thing, and it's the same spirit, but people name it differently. Yeah, both could harm you. I think people have been very harmed by like being self-centered and selfish, and I certainly have been like the greatest harm in my life right now is being so isolated. Um, I'm not gonna call it selfish because that adds shame and like that's not effective. But like, yeah. And then people have also been super harmed by being like deny yourself, you know, pour your entire self out for others. Like both of those have been harmful. And depending on which one you've been harmed by, then you're more likely to like take one or the other schema. Chad, I- I'm being a bad guy in saying it out loud. I don't think I said you were being a bad guy. Oh, I don't know. I don't really have a response to that, I guess. Passive aggressiveness.
Anyone else have any thoughts on
I like what Mitch said. I like what Abby said. Mitch was saying how hard it is to do sense making in this space. You know, that's basically what I got. One of the points I got, and then I like what Abby's saying about how these words can mean different things to different people, and this I think both of those are connected. So I'm trying to understand what Abby means when she says something, and then I also kind of have this idea of like what Chad means when he says something, and so we end up using the same words, and uh, and then another one word that stood out was the word poison, and then it's like poison in itself is like some people have more of an allergy than other people. Some people have an allergic reaction to a thing. One person's poison is another
Yeah.
person's cure. You know, it's like it's all pretty complicated.
Yeah.
I guess if I could speak where Chad's coming from and the experience that he's coming from is people in recovery circles suffer from there's some terms you'll use. Terminal uniqueness is one thing you'll hear. You can't I'm different. You all may be into this, but my situation is different than this, and so this. people also deal with selfishness and self-centeredness. Like in the Bill's story in Big Book of Alcoholics, he talks about that. And there's this sense of obsessive self-thought and a obsessive self-importance. Obsessive means that you get stuck in this thing. There's some terminologies like bringing out your pity pot and sitting on it. Like you'll in recovery circles, people will point out because why would they point that out? Things that might seem harsh or straightforward or whatever, because it's life or death. Literally, that state of being, if you have the disease of alcoholism or you do that, is that could be life or death if you stay stuck in that spot. And so the antidote to that, and I think you pointed out something that I think was really good, Abby, is like the antidote to that is the service of others. Get out of yourself and start going serving others. Now you pointed out something, Abby, I think is like good. Like if you just lose yourself in service, so let's say all you do is you have responsibilities at home, right? But what you're doing is running around helping everyone else, neglecting your responsibilities for your spouse or your kids or whatever. Like you can you can take that to some ultimate end that is not in the best interest of doing that. And so one of the things that's helpful, I think, for anyone, I think you see this is why discipleship is important. I think it's why you would see something like sponsorship is important, is having someone that you truly are in a, let's just say, a submitted relationship to in some ways, to where they'll look at you and they can see your blind spots and they'll call you on your bullshit. Because I lie to myself much more than I lie to anybody else. It's that simple. And I can't spot my own bullshit when I'm in the middle of it. And I can
mean, most of my bullshit is stuff like you're worthless, you shouldn't be alive, and what you're not doing enough and what you're doing is pointless. But yeah, I agree.
Abby, do you hear that as like a do those words come from, like, in your mind, are they coming from someone else or are they coming from you?
I don't know, it's both. I mean, I have a dissociative disorder, so it's a little more complicated. Like I have dissociated parts of self that are me, but also an unintegrated part of me. So, one perspective I can see the whole picture, and another perspective is like stuck in a little box full of lies that other people have, put on me. I would say it's both, but I guess like I did grow up with a lot of messages from I did grow up DSM is not valid. Okay. That's your opinion, I guess. I grew up with a lot of messages from other people saying things like, you're gonna burn. So like there's an anecdote that I think kind of sums up my childhood, of like my parent, she thinks service. Oh, I don't know. I don't think service to others. Okay, I'm gonna go on a tangent, or I'm gonna not say. I don't think service to others is bad for people. I don't. I just know that like it is like torture. And it's hard to like connect with those voices. Anyway, I just know that like the way that I interpreted deny yourself, serve others, self-love is poison. The way that I interpreted that, trauma causes fragmenting, yes. The way that I interpreted that led me to like be mean to other people even. Like at my lowest point, I have plenty of voices in my head telling me I'm self-centered, but I guess I don't mind people doing it out loud either. It's like, what was I saying? Sorry. Yeah, so like at my point where I was where I gave up everything that I wanted, right? I was, right, yeah, that's true. It's integrating them. And I think that using shame like tends to like shut those voices down, and then you become even more disintegrated. But sorry, I'm keep responding to the comments. But at my point in my life where I would say I was the most like trying to completely pour out and serve others, again, the way that I was interpreting it, I was so mean, and I was like, I had nothing to give. I was failing. Of course, on a personal level, I was literally starving and like barely alive. but I was also not even succeeding in serving others. Like, I didn't have friends. I was irritated with my cousins. I was irritated with people I was trying to help. I was, like, sitting on my bed watching 2 of my friends have a close conversation with each other because they trusted each other, and I just wasn't in that circle, and all I could feel was, like, resentment. Like, that's where it got me, trying to give up everything I wanted and trying to, not care about myself. It got me to a point where I wasn't helping myself and I wasn't helping others. So, like, but yeah, I think, yeah, there's a way to put it where I could say I was actually being really selfish back then and now I'm less selfish. I just wouldn't put it that way because, like I say, like, the duality of symbols, I mean, there's no, like, terms can have different meanings. The self and self-centeredness, that can be a bad thing or a good thing. It depends on, like, the spirit of it, I think.
I want to let you know that in my life, I've known some worthless people, and you are not one of them.
Thanks. DSM are based on psych. I don't know, the language of dissociative disorders has helped me and borne good fruit in my life and helped me understand myself better, so I use it because of that, because I use whatever terminology bears, like, good fruit in my life. But the times when I've felt the most like myself have also been the times when I've had the most what I think people are trying to get at with this, like, oh no, the moderator left. We're uncontrolled now. But the times when I've been the most, like, it's, like, both at the same time. Like, the times when I've felt the most myself, unfortunately, have been brief so far, I think, because I'm just in an isolated place right now, but, like, it's like being lifted out of yourself, and I felt that, like, everything's a gift, and there's just, like, a free flowing of even that myself is a gift to me and that I am a gift to, it's like you couldn't describe it as either self-centeredness or, okay, only gifts that only you have. Yeah. But I guess I can see why people could describe it either as you need to love yourself or you need to forget about yourself, because the experience is kind of like both of those at once when you're at the peak of, like, I don't know, integration.
How do you know when you're at the peak of integration?
Oh, well, maybe not the peak because it's always further. But I mean, in the moments that I have felt like the most, like, transcendent and the most myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you say, Sartori?
Well, so I figured I'd share a little experience that I had that I'm sure resonates a little bit with your story. And so, my dad was a pastor. But he started being a pastor when I was like 10 or something like that. Because the pastor at our church left, and he just kind of filled in for a while and stayed in that job and stuff. But when I was a kid, I was real unruly, and I had ADHD. Like, I still do. I take medication for it, and it's like, the difference if I'm doing that or not is like night and day. So it's clearly a thing. But during the times when, like, my parents were figuring out that stuff, they they didn't know. That was like, what, 30 years ago or something like that. So it was like, it was more of it was a less common thing, and it was more shaky ground as far as, like, diagnosing and things like that. And I was real self-conscious about it because it was like I didn't know why. Like, why do I get punished more than, like, my brother and sister? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I didn't know. Like, because it wasn't something I was like trying to do. And I remember like this one time, when my parent, my dad was like real frustrated with whatever, and he was like praying for me, and like then he like basically started praying like or speaking to like the demons that he thought were in me or whatever. And it was like, crap, like my dad thinks I have demons. Like, what is wrong with me? I mean, I already felt like more self-conscious because I was like, how come I have to go to these doctor visits that like my brother doesn't have to go to and stuff? And and it's funny. So I'm the middle child. I'm not, but but uh I hadn't thought about that for a long time. And then it was recently, um, my dad said something in regard to, he said something in regard to something one of my kids did. And I basically got real annoyed, and I was like, well, I'm not going to take parenting advice from you, Dad, because, you made some mistakes. And I kind of brought up this thing, and I hadn't thought about it for a long time. And like being on the other side of things now and stuff, and like being a parent and realizing like parents are, always just trying to do like the best they can, and they don't know what they're doing. There's not a license or whatever that they don't give you a class to like prepare you for what it's like to have a brand new, totally unique human being living in your household. And so, I realized I had forgiven my dad from that a long time ago, and he didn't even remember it when I mentioned it to him or whatever. And I think that, some of that is like, people do this stuff or they say this stuff, and maybe to them it's like part of the routine thing or whatever. You're like reading the Bible and you're reading books, and it's saying like, well, these are the signs of demonic oppression or whatever. And so because that's the thing, is just everybody's just trying to make sense of the world, and we apply these different filters to it, whether they're based in scripture or based in a particular interpretation of scripture, or just whatever. Because I've also subsequently, like, I've experienced spiritual things, and I've experienced what I would say is like demonic attacks. And so on the one hand, it's like I know that like the scientific method and like using medication and stuff solves some problems, but it doesn't solve every problem. And so you kind of like, you need to have the different filters, because one size does not fit all or whatever. But it's just, I think it's a terrible thing in that people don't know the harm that they're doing when they just will spit these things out there. And like, that, predicting the spirit of masturbation in 18-year-old boys is like a pretty neat, pretty easy parlor trick or whatever. Like that's not a great intuition or whatever. But I've had the positive things happen too, and at the end of the day, I guess some of it is like we choose to live according to what we hope. We don't always get perfect certainty of everything, and like
that sounded like a gym.
Like what?
That sounded like a gym to me. Like,
what do you mean?
It's like the thing you're living according to the thing you hope, right?
Well, I mean, that's what. Well, I mean, there is that sort of thing. Some of it is you don't realize like what your core values are, but you can learn about them by examining how you act in the world. And then, or if you want to change them, you can, choose to act in a certain way, and then the feelings kind of follow along with that or whatever, like, so, it's just, we have emotions, we have experience, we have these writings, and we have the testimony of other people, and we kind of have to use all this stuff and try to figure out where what we think is true out of all of that, and we live according to what we think is true of that. And I think it's easy for like the emotional aspect of that to be the driver. Like I feel like this is all fake, so that must be, and then you live accordingly. But it's like, well, that's what your emotions tell you, but maybe you could see like there's benefits to trying something different, so you have to take all of those different things into account, and then at the end of the day, that's why I put my faith in a God that I believe is gracious, because I think that he knows it's hard for us to figure out all this stuff and get it right. So we need that grace.
Amen. And women. I'm gonna head out, guys. I enjoyed it. Keep going. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah, I actually have to hop on a call real quick, but I want to thank Abby, Michael, and Mitch for sharing with me. I appreciate that.
Good to hear from you, Tim.
Well, yeah, I should go to work. So, I guess if it should be the end, then that's probably a good ending. So.